For the slight delay. Welcome everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to this extraordinary meeting of the Business Board, which I called on the 12th of February 2021 in order to approve the revised version of the assurance framework in advance of Combined Authority Board approval on the 24th of March 2021. In terms of technical arrangements, today's meeting is being held by Zoom video conferencing and will be live recorded for governance purposes. If you experience any technical difficulties during the meeting, please refresh your connection in the first instance. If it becomes apparent that we have lost members and are no longer quorate, it may be necessary to adjourn the meeting. Can I also remind board members this is a private meeting which only board members and specific officers are invited to attend. So I trust you're all in a secure and private place. I'll begin by calling the names of all members of the Business Board in alphabetical order to establish their presence for the record. Apologies have been received from Mark Dorset, from Faye Holland and from Mayor James Palmer, with Councillor Anna Bailey attending as the Mayor's substitute. So thank you, Anna, for that. Welcome. Let's do a quick roll call. Tina?
Yes.
Thank you. Good morning, Tina. Amir?
Yes.
Amir. Al Kingsley?
Yes, sir.
Al. Nicky Morby? Jason?
I'm here.
Hey, Jason. Andy Neely?
Yeah.
Hi, Andy. Nitin?
Yeah.
Q. Rebecca Stevens?
Yeah.
Hi, Rebecca. Kelly Swingler?
Hi, Austin.
Hi, Kelly. Good morning. Councillor Annie Bailey?
Hi.
I've seen you, Anna, so
Yeah,
hi.
I'm here.
John Holditch?
Sir.
John, and myself, Austin Adams. All right, this is an opportunity to declare pecuniary interests in any other conflicts of interest. Do members have any conflicts of interest to declare? I'll take that as a no, thank you. Turning to the matters for the meeting, I'd like to remind members that an amendment to the published recommendations for today's meeting was circulated yesterday, the 3rd of March, which will be clarified during the presentation of the report. Rochelle will present the report, please.
Thank
Rochelle.
you. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Just want to say thank you to you all for making yourselves available to attend this extraordinary meeting. You will see, firstly, that there was an amendment to the published recommendations, and I will talk you through that as I discuss the main body of the report. I must apologise, I have some work going on at home, so you may hear some drilling. I can't do anything about that, so my apologies in advance. Okay, so just turning to the report, the last time members saw the assurance framework would have been in 2019, where it was recommended to the Combined Authority for approval. In terms of what we've done now, we've tried to align it to more of what we need and what we're doing. We've learnt lessons from the past, we've reflected on our governance arrangements and just made the document a little bit more succinct. Just for your background knowledge, the assurance framework is a requirement of MHCLG. We need one as a mayoral combined authority and we need one as a LEP. And it's something that government regularly check that we are compliant with. There is a criteria of governance information that must be included in the document, and we are checked for compliance against that list of compliance issues, if you like. We had a compliance check in November of last year, and that went well. We got a provisional score for our governance in our most recent annual performance review of MET. The scoring's changed slightly this year to account for COVID, but you can be satisfied that what we've set out in the document complies with the requirements of government. So I hear you say, why are we changing it? Just to outline that it's just to align with what we do, but the revisions that are proposed do not make us non-compliant in any way, shape or form. Now there's we've broken it down into two sections for you so you can more understand the document. And I appreciate when the document has lots of track changes, it may be confusing to read. So we've got the the revisions that are relevant to the combined authority. Rob will speak you through those briefly in relation to benefit cost ratio, and then we'll revert back to me where I'll talk you through the revisions that are more relevant to the business board, and then I will outline what the next steps will be. Rob.
Good afternoon, board. The main change that we've made to how the combined authority appraises its projects is in relation to benefit cost ratio, as Rochelle mentioned. Now, as a bit of background, the Treasury Department issues various guidance documents that tell the rest of government how we're supposed to operate. One of those is specifically about project design, appraisal, and how you choose which projects you take forward, and that's called the Green Book, which will be referenced in the assurance framework. The combined authority is required to adhere to the Green Book. And during 2020, the Treasury Department had a consultation with the whole country to see how the Green Book was affecting project appraisal, whether it was positive or negative, and how it could be improved. And it was identified there was a very strong focus on the benefit cost ratio, which is literally just the total cost of the project compared to the financial value of all the benefits. And 2 is very high, and above that's even better. And our current assurance framework required that projects have a BCR of at least 2. Now, the problem that Treasury identified through their consultation is that you can have a very high benefit cost ratio for a project, even if it doesn't actually meet your strategic objectives. And that there were projects being brought forward that were scoring well and getting funding, even though they weren't meeting the needs of whomever was funding it. To address that, they've released a new version of the Green Book in December 2020. And so we've been updating our assurance framework to match that. It has a much greater focus on the strategic fit, and you now have to go through a phase of measuring strategic fit before you consider the benefit cost ratio. While this won't have any direct impact on the business board because the project appraisal process we've put in place with you guys is different, it may well affect the form of the business cases you see as part of projects coming forward for funding, because they're quite likely to take account of the Green Book methodology. But all it really means is we have to put in smart objectives that meet our strategic aims before then looking at benefit cost ratio. Are there any questions on that from the board?
Thanks, Rob.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, Austin, I had one.
Sorry, Andy, I didn't see you.
Yeah, no. It was just a question of whose strategy are we fitting to? And just clarifying that, because clearly, I mean, the business board it has some independence from, although our decisions are approved by the combined authority board, the business board also has some independence. So whose strategy takes precedence, the business boards or the combined authorities, if they were ever to diverge?
In effect, it would have to be the business boards for this purposes of this meeting. The combined authorities role as an accountable body is more around, are the decisions you're making legal and financially prudent? It's not really a strategic oversight role for funding, which is purely for the business board to award, like local growth funds were. So you'd expect any business cases coming to the business board to have those objectives set in light of the business board strategies. I would have thought mostly the LIS would be the really key one. Of course, that is also shared with the combined authority, but I certainly wouldn't expect someone to come forward saying this fantastically fits with the housing strategy, so you should fund it. I'm sure we'd have regard to it, but the business board is not necessarily working to achieve the housing strategy of the combined authority.
Okay, thank you, Robert. It's just helpful to clarify that.
Thanks, Rob. Are there any other questions before Rochelle talks us through the implications for the business board specifically, I think? All right, Rochelle, please.
Thank you, Chair. So moving on to the revisions relevant to the business board, the first change is that the business board area being coterminous with that of the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough area has been included, and we've now removed all the overlap. So members will see that there is a new map included, and there's the reference to the strategic agreements that have been signed up with the other authorities to finalise that issue of boundary. So that's now no longer pending but finalised. And I do believe there's paper coming to yourselves in March, which will put the matter to a complete conclusion. In terms of an update to reflect the gender balance of our members, so we've got the third of business board members being female. That's been updated, and it's no longer a target, but it's what we have in place. We now reference the induction process, which is again a requirement that BEIS want every member of the business board to have undertaken the induction. So there was a very small amendment to the publication date for minutes being 10 and not 12. Amendment to the chair's term from 2 to 3 years, which aligns with the requirements of the national framework. There's some changes that have made in relation to calls for projects, just to reflect the current position, being that the LGF funding call period is no longer applicable, but the payment period is still outstanding because we've still got more payments to get. We've fine-tuned the clawback process in relation to projects whereby we feel that we need to claw back funding, and that's just to account for situations where we may want to claw back an asset. And then the last change that we've made, the change request process as well, we've made it more simplified and iron out some of the details so it's more refined. And then lastly, we have included revised internal scrutiny arrangements with the proposal of having a overview and scrutiny lead member who will shadow the work of the business board. Now, the chair is aware of this proposal. It's something that went to the overview and scrutiny committee in February last month, and a number of recommendations were made to invite the business board to agree a lead member from overview and scrutiny. Now, what the member will do is just simply shadow everything that the business board does, and if there's any feedback in terms of the processes we have that need to be reported back to either the business board or to ONS, that feedback will be reported. There is a proposed member for the position, which is Councillor Murphy, and so I hope that members would have seen the role description, which is an appendix, and that forms part of the recommendations today before you. There have been some formatting changes as well to the document, and some information reviewed or removed rather, just to outline the current position. So for example, in terms of business plan, we're no longer in the 1920, we're in the 2021 period. So what happens next is the document is going to A&G tomorrow. There may be further matters consideration that the committee wish for us to address, which will also be incorporated into the document. The proposal is then that the document is sent to MHCLG for sign off. And while that process is happening, the document will also go to the Combined Authority Board. So there is a delegation sought, and that delegation is proposed via A&G tomorrow. So there's no need for the delegation, what was in place prior to the amendment. So just to recap through the recommendations that are before members today, members are asked to recommend the revised draft of the assurance framework to the Combined Authority Board, noting that the draft is subject to sign off by MHCLG. Note that the revised draft of the assurance framework will be presented to the Combined Authority Board by the Audit and Governance Committee. Note the delegation that I just mentioned for the monitoring officer to revise the draft following any comments from A&G and also feedback from MHCLG, and then to agree the lead member from ONS, Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and that's also subject to the agreement of the Combined Authority. The board also asked to agree the role description, which is in the appendix, and also to note that Councillor Murphy will undertake this role. I believe Roberta is on the line. if there is any questions specifically to the amendments made in relation to the combined authority, if there are. But that concludes matters, and I'm happy to take questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle. I can see a hand up from Al Kingsley.
Thanks, Austin. Probably my misunderstanding, but just could you clarify, Rochelle, the role of the lead member? Is it to ensure the correct process and protocols are followed, or to scrutinise the rationale behind decisions made?
Yeah, so it's two of the same thing. So it's the normal remit of scrutiny to scrutinising decisions made, but there may be other things that are picked up in terms of our process, which also forms indirectly decision making. So you are right technically, but processes may or may not be relevant to decision making. So they will report back if necessary, but primarily it's a scrutiny role.
Let me just comment on that, if I may, because whilst this is probably new news to the board members, this debate's been going on for a little while. I've twice been before the Overview and Scrutiny Committee at their request to explain what we do and how we go about doing it. They do have some concerns generally centred around the fact that our meetings are held privately and not in public, and that in itself, for some people, does raise questions and intrigue about what we do and how we go about doing it. And the counter argument to that, of course, is that we're often dealing with investment decisions and information provided to us from third parties that are seeking funding and support that don't want that information in the public domain, and rightly so. That would I think constrain what we do in many respects if that were the case. So, cognizant of some of the questions that have been asked of myself at those reviews with the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, we talked about various ways that we could improve the transparency, and this proposal of having someone pitch up is something I would welcome and support. I certainly don't see it as a spy in the camp, someone kind of figuring out and feeding information back. Quite the opposite, actually. I'm looking for this to be very, very positive, something that we get good quality, independent third-party feedback from, to help us to continuously shape and refine our policies and procedures, as we have done over the last year or so, to very good effect. I see John's hand raised and Andy's. We'll go to John first, please. You're on mute, John.
I can't believe you're that naive, mate. It makes it political, and that's exactly why we've tried. And I'm not official member of the board, nor is the mayor, because it's a true business board. By having, especially the one that's been selected, you would not ever be able to keep politics out of it.
Okay. Andy?
I'm on a different topic, so if we want to finish this one first, then I'll make my comment.
All right. Let's stay with the political angle for a minute. Anyone have a view on that? Appreciate. John's from that world, in difference to myself, so
that was going to be my question, Austin. I mean, John, you understand the political world. What would your advice be, given where we are?
I understand that we should sing for our supper, and the chairman should go and report to some scrutiny panel. I think that's good, but if you're going to have somebody that's going to attend our meetings, then I think it has to be a responsible person. Be careful, careful what I say. This is public, but you will not have that because they are members of the current opposition, if you understand what I mean, and they'll use every opportunity. And if you're talking about investments, they'll hang you for if somebody's got some investments in China, or you've invested in smoking, or something. The whole thing will become completely political. If you got somebody that was non-political, that was actually overseeing us, or the conduit between the two of them, you know, that would work. But I have to say, I don't think it works politically, and I think you'll regret it. I mean, I won't be here. I'm retiring, but they take it. My 40 years of experience tells you you'll end up in a political quagmire.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear though, that, you know, the role is one of an observer. They're not a participant in the debate, and they will not have access to the information that is of a more sensitive nature, and that's our gift to decide that.
They make it up though, Austin.
Well, they'll make it up anyway, though, won't they, John? That's part of the problem. You know, it was evident from some of the questions that I've been asked that they're very politically biased, and therefore, you know, providing what transparency we can, in my mind, is a better way to go forward. But it's for the board to debate and agree. So,
Okay.
I see Al's hand raised. Al?
Sorry, Austin. Yeah, I was just kind of following on the comments from Rochelle's clarification and the subsequent comments. I do support your view that it's healthier to have somebody and have oversight than to leave people to draw their own conclusions. My question was more about, given the nature of the members of the business board and they're selected based on experience, would it not be more prudent, and it may be that this applies, but would it not be prudent to have somebody that has a background where they can actually form the opinions? And I'm not saying that in the sense that this member might not be able to, because maybe they can. It was more that if certain information isn't made available to them, on what level are they left to actually effectively scrutinise the validity of decisions taken?
It's a fair point, Al. Andy?
So on this one, are all members of the scrutiny committee political, John, or are there any independent members on the scrutiny committee? Because that might be a way of depoliticising it.
No, they're all political, mate.
And it's not really in our gift to decide who
No,
that
it's not.
is.
No,
It's
it's not.
for the scrutiny committee to decide. I see Tina's hand raised. Tina?
Can't we have two then? One from each party. And I was also interested to know what Anna's view was as another.
Do you want me to come in now, Austin?
Yes, please, Anna. We'd
I
appreciate
mean,
your...
this is really, really difficult, you know, because there'll be criticism if you don't allow it to happen as well, as much as anything. A lot of it is about how you manage it. I mean, they will, you know, they're going to do what they want to do. They'll say what they want to say. You know, the more they are involved, the more opportunity and airtime they've got to do it. There's nothing to hide, you know, but it will soak up time and effort and energy. You know, that's the issue. You know, you've seen what it does at the Combined Authority Board, Austin. You know what it's like. It ties officers' time up. It really is the biggest issue.
Chair, if I can just come in here on one point. So we try and strictly follow the national framework as best possible. And it talks about having internal scrutiny arrangements with the accountable body. So it's not unusual, and it is an expectation as it's outlined in the national, if that helps in terms of decision making.
Sorry, it is an expectation that you do have.
So there's an expectation that there is internal scrutiny that is conducted by the accountable body in the national framework. So there's a government expectation that your accountable body scrutiny committee is involved in scrutinising the decisions of the business board or the work of the business board. So it's not unusual if that helps in swaying your decision making.
Thank you, Rochelle. Let me go to Jason, who's got his hand raised.
Yeah, I'm just curious, what is the regulatory process for scrutinizing the scrutiny committee? So if it comes down to us feeling for whatever reason that the lead member or the committee is insufficient in its role, who governs them and the composition?
So it will probably be member conduct matters, or yeah, I think I'll have to think about that a little bit more, Jason, and come back to you on that. But generally, if we can fit it into possibly member conduct issues, that will be it at the minute. And is it scrutiny, the Office for Scrutiny? I can't remember what their title is, but there is a scrutiny office that sits above, and we could probably ask for guidance or yeah, or so otherwise. But yeah, I can come back to you with that name. It's just slipped my head.
And you would know, Rochelle, there is no member discipline that you can administer. There is no law that says that the member can't do it. You know?
Quite right. There's no sanctions.
Absolutely is no. And when it's all out in the paper and whatever have you, you'll moan like hell and you'll complain, but there's nothing you can do about it.
I see Tina's hands raised again.
Yes, I'm quite nervous about this because I have been involved with another LEP that's literally been paralysed by what can only be described as political issues, political interference, paralysed because, as someone already said, the amount of work they put the officers to just to slow down the process is probably more important than the actual, the actual politics of it, which I think is perhaps a bit easier to deal with and manage. So if we could find a way for that not to happen, I'd feel a lot more comfortable about it.
Thank you, Tina. And Anna has her hand raised.
I just wanted to ask Rochelle whether this is going to be an expectation from MHCLG to have this, and therefore, basically, are we debating it for no point because MHCLG will expect to see it in there? Are there any other LEPs that don't have this arrangement? It would be another question. And just a reminder about the problems when the LEP was the LEP rather than the business board. One arguably could say that was maybe, issues around lack of scrutiny. This is really difficult. So, Rochelle, any idea about whether anyone else doesn't have this arrangement and whether MHCLG will definitely require this?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Bailey. Unfortunately, I'm not sure about what the approach is elsewhere. Perhaps, Domenico, you could come in if you know of anything helpful. The expectation is that we have arrangements which we are free to, what those arrangements may be. We've got the discretion as to what the arrangements are, but there is an expectation for internal scrutiny, external scrutiny, and for the accountable body scrutiny committee to be involved in that process. And I've just got the name for you. So it's the Centre of Governance and Scrutiny. So if we had any issues, going back to Jason's question, those are the people that we would liaise with for guidance. And that I believe there was some new scrutiny guidance that's come out very recently, which also is going to form part of what we would or would not question. But effectively, in terms of the another consideration for the business board today is just that it's not unusual. It's been very transparent, and the political issues will always be the political issues, but whether or not we want to show that we are very, very transparent, or that the business board is very transparent, and work collaboratively with the accountable body scrutiny committee is really the decision that should be in the forefront of your minds.
Indeed. Thank you, Rochelle. Andy.
So I mean, I think the danger is that if we don't work collaboratively, we will just get subject to more scrutiny anyway. And as people have said, there's nothing to hide. So I would say, I think I would like to separate two things. I think I'd like to separate the decision about, or the discussion about, whether or not we should be subject to the scrutiny that's being proposed. That's one question. And then there's a second question about who actually does that from the scrutiny committee. Now, we might not have any choice or flexibility over that latter question, but it seems to be they're two slightly different topics, and we could be conflating them if we're not careful.
Agreed. I see Kelly's hands raised.
Yeah, thanks, Austin. I mean, I suppose from my perspective, I think everything that we have discussed today, everything, Rochelle, that you've kind of put forward, I think is really positive. I think these are really positive steps forward. I'm all for kind of simplifying and doing everything else. I think if we are debating whether we have this lead member, if we look more at the role, potentially, whether we're worried about the person or whether we are worried about the role, and actually whether there then needs to be something. I appreciate we can't do anything if anything were to get out into a public domain, but is there something that we could be more specific on in terms of the role profile, then role description, in terms of accountabilities, responsibilities, what is expected and what's not, and actually what needs to stay internally, and, you know, try and make that a more robust process, rather than personally worrying about a person in a role, or actually what the role is there to do. If we think the role is a good idea, maybe, you know, is there a way that we can tighten that up more to say these are the expectations and requirements of the role, this is what needs to stay absolutely confidential, and maybe kind of take it from there. But I think, again, we've got nothing to hide. We are very transparent. You know, everything that we do is by the book anyway. And so actually, you know, from my perspective, I welcome everything that we've kind of been talking about so far today.
Thank you, Kelly. Well, Rochelle, a question on that. If we wanted to tune the role and responsibilities document over time, cognizant of our learning as we go forward, would that not require us to have to go back and revisit the whole assurance framework? Could that be dealt with in isolation?
So at this moment in time, I don't believe that we've got the role description as an appendix to the assurance framework. So we've got some flexibility there, Chair. It would just be communicating with the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, because we'd obviously need their agreement and then back to the combined authority. Yeah.
Yes, that's something we could negotiate over time if we needed to amend.
Most definitely.
Okay.
I think you need to put it in the beginning, Austin. You need to have the rules there from the start. I accept what the previous speaker just said. If we could get the rules right and they're tight, then you've got some means of controlling a person, especially if they step outside it.
Can I just add, is it worth the board considering introducing a term limit for the lead member, so we periodically review who that person is, in a similar way that we would do with co-opted members every 12 months? We could do something similar with this lead member, Rochelle, board.
That could be an option. I think going back helpfully to Kelly's point about the actual role description, if there's anything that we're not too satisfied with in that document, that would be our starting point. I'm more dubious about sort of having any separate concerns about the individual, because this is a member that we have sitting on the committee of the combined authority. So there shouldn't be any issue who that person is. And when I say combined authority is Overview and Scrutiny Committee. But I do appreciate Councillor Holditch's concerns from a political point of view.
Okay, I see Hannah's.
Just wanted to add. I mean, I think the reality is that, you know, we've got to accept that there's got to be something there. Personally, I think the reality is that it'd be better not to make too much of this. Otherwise, you know, you highlight the opportunity and they might change their mind about who it's going to be for somebody a bit more difficult. And therefore, you know, I think they're pretty busy scrutinising the mayor and the combined authority board, and you know, the business board does operate independently. So I think, you know, there is less opportunity for political nonsense. So maybe we're being concerned, hopefully for no good reason, but you know, when it comes to some issue that blows up, then that's when the arrangements need to be robust.
And just to add, Chair, that you will recall that there isn't complete access. So confidential matters, that lead member won't be in the room for those items when they're discussed. There's only a certain amount of information that then can be relayed to overview and scrutiny, and again in the public domain.
And the definition of what's confidential is within our gift.
That's right.
Okay. Let me go to Rebecca, who's been patiently waiting.
Austin, I think I'd certainly welcome the separation between the principle of inviting somebody onto the board and the individual that we're talking about, because I think the principle is what we ought to be talking about, although I totally understand John's concerns knowing the individual. I think we're a bit damned if we do and damned if we don't. I think it will probably reflect worse on us if we try to kick back on this. I'd be quite interested in exactly what their role is in very practical terms. So they're not allowed to speak at our meetings, they're an observer, but presumably they go back to overview, scrutiny and report on us. And if we are completely confident, as we think we are, that we're being transparent and we've got nothing to hide, we shouldn't be worried unless we're then concerned about that individual's opinion, which seems to, you know, if you like.
Why don't you spell it out, Rebecca?
But it is then an individual opinion, isn't it, of whoever is attending to scrutinise us. And I guess our concern is that valid opinion, and how do we combat it if we don't think it is a valid opinion?
Well, one of the mechanisms to help to do that is that there's an obligation not only to report back to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, but to talk to me as well as the chair. And that's something that we added in because I was very keen that if we have an open and transparent arrangement, then we need to be able to capture that feedback ourselves and determine how to process it, not necessarily through the lens of managing the political angles of it, but from a process point of view, it's important that we know and understand and take advantage of an extra pair of eyes to understand what we might improve. So, you know, there will be an element of the board trusting me to some extent to be able to manage this individual. Now, I don't know the guy. I honestly don't. I've spoken to him very briefly on a call, and you know, insufficient contact to form any sort of opinion. But you can be assured that, you know, I'm pretty blunt at shortchanging people on political issues. You know, we're in the business of making valued judgments based on facts and good business common sense and looking at investments in the long term. We have the benefit of determining what's confidential and what's not. To some extent, there's a control mechanism there, and if this starts to wander off into political interference, then he's going to get pretty short change from me, I can assure you. Now, to John's point, that, you know, that's all well and good after the event, perhaps, and we might have a bit of fallout. But I think, you know, we're going to have to live with some of that here. There's a balance of, in my mind, we have absolutely nothing to hide. We run a really, really tight ship from a compliance point of view. We've got some fantastic processes that we've developed over and above many other LEPs in the UK to bring our decisions to a sensible conclusion and a safe conclusion. And we shouldn't be shouldn't be concerned about letting someone come in and have a look at that as an observer. I really don't. I personally, I do welcome that. I think if it's managed properly, then it's a very, very good thing and can only further strengthen our processes going forward. If we have political interference in and amongst that, well, we'll have to figure out how to deal with that. Nitty, I see your.
I was going to say, do we really have a choice? I think the benefit of what you just said and the fact that, you know, whatever problem he has is actually put to us before he takes it. And if he doesn't get any satisfactory discussion, then it's our problem, isn't it? You know, if he feels there's something wrong and we can't justify that discussion, then he goes further. So is that check going to be, because that's what I think you're suggesting, that Austin, that they would come to you first before they reported it?
Yeah.
And I think John's view is they may not tell us everything and report it anyway.
No, we do have another third party that do observe our meetings, and I remember having a discussion with those people very early on with the business board, and they had a number of concerns. And what I put to them was, well, if you've got concerns that come out of any meeting that we have, pick up the phone and ring me immediately, and let's have a chat about it, and we can put those things to bed. And I can tell you, I have had not one telephone call, not one. And, you know, that's a much more healthier process in terms of if there is an issue, then sooner we know about it, sooner we can do something about it. And let's just be all grown up about it. And that's how I see this working. Now, I may be proven wrong, and I certainly appreciate, you know, John's experience in these matters. But we're also in a position where if we say no to this, that's not going to help our cause either, and is likely to fuel further criticism and conspiracy theories around what we do within the business board and how this works. And we've really got absolutely nothing to hide here. We've got fantastic processes. We've got a great team of people. We have terrific debates like this about various points, and more often than not, with the very odd exception, we move forward having reached a consensus and a unanimous decision on things.
Thanks for debating it. You debated it well. And I understand your argument. And I think the key is that we make sure that the rules are there in the first place. So if the rules are bust, we've got something to go back for. It's not a personality issue. It's got something we can go back to the scrutiny panel and say this guy's not doing or lady's not doing it right.
Yeah. Okay. Rochelle, what are our options here then if we wanted to go back and revisit that part of the document?
We don't know what's in it. We haven't seen it. We don't know what the rules are, what the job description is.
So the role description is an appendix, Councillor Holditch. I'm not sure if you had a look.
Well, I've seen it.
It's there. Do you want a couple of
19.
Couple of seconds? 19. Thank you.
Just while people are looking it up, I mean, you know, my view is that there would be more concern if we didn't accept the proposal. So, you know, I think we accept the proposal, and you know, I have a lot of confidence in Austin's ability to manage this. And frankly, I think that, you know, the person will probably, you know, not pay too much attention. It's just that if and when there is something that is getting a lot of public attention, you know, that's when it matters that we've got the right process in place. But as Austin has said, this is all about managing the individual and having a decent relationship with them and asking them to highlight things in advance. And I think Austin's all over that, and I've got every confidence that he'll do a good job with that. So I think the dangers of saying no, we're not accepting scrutiny in this way are far greater, frankly. then, and the reality is that probably this will be quite a bored individual who won't want to poke their nose in all that much, because generally people are quite busy doing other things that give them a higher profile.
I didn't think you were that naive, Anna.
Thank you, Anna.
Chair, I just say in terms of rules, I'm conscious that we're talking about, you know, elected members, etc., and that there is a code of conduct, which is the ultimate rules. So I think that the starting point and the expectation is the code of conduct, and then we, you know, if we see that that's not sufficient, which I believe will be in any event, then we could reflect at that point in time. So I wouldn't be proposing additional rules beyond the code of conduct at this point, Chair, and then the role description is set out in the appendix.
Okay, thank you, Rochelle. Hopefully people have had time to just reflect on page 19 if they haven't read it before. Did I see Andy's hand raised again?
Yeah, but it's a separate point, Austin. So let's finish this.
Okay, I don't see any other hands raised. You wanted to go to a slightly different place, Andy, I think.
Yeah, it was just to go back to Rob's comment earlier. And I thought your clarification was really helpful, Rob. But I was then looking at the on page 91 of the document in section 5.1, which is all about robust decision-making principles. And the first bullet on page 91 now reads, unless fulfilling a statutory requirement, all business cases must demonstrate a strong fit with the combined authority strategic objectives as set out in devolution deal, growth ambition statement and evidenced in SPEAR. And then the second bullet point is where there are relevant strategies approved by the combined authority, the case must also demonstrate alignment to these, e.g. local industrial strategy. Are we comfortable that we're not ending up making the business board subservient to this combined authority strategic objectives with the wording in those two bullet points? I mean, I don't think we're going to, this is not because I think we should be diverging, but I don't want to find us in a position where for some reason we end up finding we signed up to something that constrains us in a way that the business board would not want to be constrained in 5 years' time.
Yeah.
So Rob, is that, have I missed something? Because it does look to me as I read that it says it absolutely, whatever we do has to be aligned with the combined authority strategic objectives, and then the Liz is subservient to that or a secondary consideration.
Yeah, that's probably my drafting, so apologies for that. The implication was that the Liz, the local industrial strategy, is driven by the SPEAR, and thus by adhering to the local industrial strategy, we are adhering to the SPEAR. However, I can see your concern in terms of the phrasing, so I'm happy to go back and have a look at that, make it clearer that business board decisions would not have to match the other elements of the combined authority strategic framework.
Yeah, a small change to the order of precedence in the drafting there would be helpful in that respect. I mean, I would hope that we don't end up in a position where we've got a hugely misaligned strategy. And in some respects, I think you could argue that that's helpful as well in making sure that the business board doesn't grow legs and go off on a tangent in a different direction, pursuing a somewhat different agenda. Your point's very well made, Andy. Is it possible to change that? It's almost a second bullet that just needs a slight tweak to the wording.
Yes, it can be. The wording of that section and the other one with the change to the benefit cost ratio is still being discussed with the Department of Transport.
Okay.
They should have no particular axe to grind around the left, so they shouldn't object to a clarification to that. It will be subject to their approval ultimately.
Yeah, and the reason I mean, I'm absolutely with you. It would be unlikely, I think, that we were diverging, but equally, I don't want to accidentally paint any future business board in a corner that they don't want to be painted in.
Yeah, no, good catch, Andy. Thank you. From a process point of view, then we could approve this contingent upon making a slight change there. Rochelle?
Yeah, so yes, Chair, that's fine, because we've asked for the delegation tomorrow at A&G, or that will be the proposal. So we suspect that there will be minor tweaks necessary. The delegation will cover that point.
Okay, okay. All right, appreciate that. We spent an awful lot of time debating the pros and cons of the Yeovian Scrutiny Committee issue. Are there any other points? Appreciate there's a lot of changes here. Many of them are fairly minor and in formatting and the like. I had to replace my red ink cartridge, Rochelle, when I printed it out. So, does anyone else have any other comments? And I think we're going to have to put this to a vote because I think it's evident we've got different views. All righty. In which case, let's put this to a vote. If I get my roll call. Let's go
Chair, it's Monica. Would you like me to call out the names?
Yes, please, Monica. Monica, if you could do that for me, that would be helpful.
Yeah, sure. And then we are taking it as one recommendation. We are going through. Okay. Can I ask Tina Barnsley?
I think I'm in favour, just.
Amir Khalid?
Yeah, I think I'm in favor just as well. I just had, Austin, may I just make a small comment?
Of course.
If the business board is supposed to be an independent board that decides on investment based on return on investment, purely a business decision, then we already have political people on the board, the mayor and some councillors. So already the whole thing is a bit diluted. So that's why I'm reluctantly agreeing, same as Tina, because the principle's already kind of shaken a bit. So having more scrutiny, fine, we'll go with that.
Having said that, the political members of the board don't have any votes, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is helpful in that respect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Amir.
Al Kingsley.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I'd probably fall in the reluctant. I'd rather it was an independent scrutiny rather than political scrutiny. But I think a lot of points are made, which is putting trust in Austin, which I have. So yeah, we have to see how it proceeds.
Well,
Jason Millard.
I just echo everybody's sentiments and thank you, Rochelle, for providing. Can you hear me? Yeah, I just want to say real quickly, thanks, Rochelle, for providing that answer. And as long as we have a clear mechanism for addressing any concerns we might have going forward, if we feel that the scrutiny mechanism or the person selected as lead member isn't appropriate, then I'm in favor.
Andy Neely.
Yeah, also in favour.
Nitin Patel.
Yes, in favor.
Rebecca Stevens.
Yes, in favour.
Kelly Swingler.
Yeah, in favour.
Thank you. That's all in favour.
I too would be in favour of moving forward.
Sorry.
All right, thanks everyone. Appreciate everyone's time at relatively short notice too for an exceptional meeting. It's been a very interesting debate. Thank you. I think that's testimony to how we do business in the business board, and I think I was very pleased with the last half an hour or so. Thank you for that and everyone's opinions. We'll bring the meeting to a close, and we'll allow Rebecca and the officers to, Rochelle and the officers to move forward to the next steps, please.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Austin, sorry, apologies. Could I just relay a quick message from John T. Hill?
Yes.
Basically, he wanted, if he'd have been here today himself, he apologises he couldn't make it. He wanted me to relay that he's busy writing, with inputs from several of us, an update paper on the budget in relation to our strategy for maximising our funding. This in respect of levelling up, shared prosperity, and the new pilot fund for this year, this community renewal fund. So he'll be supplying that paper around, circulating it shortly, and is suggesting maybe we run a quick workshop on new ideas at some point very soon.
All right. Look forward to that, Steve. Thank you. All right. Let me wish everyone a very pleasant afternoon, and thanks very much for your time and contributions to the meeting. Thank you. Good job.
Thanks.
Thank you, members. Bye.
Fine, thank you.